Good afternoon, everyone, and you're all very welcome. I think that's a really nice way to start our metastatic breast cancer awareness session. So you've just heard from three lovely ladies there from the Marie Keating Foundation Positive Living Group about their cancer and being part of a supportive group which is helping them to live their best lives. And actually, the nice thing I think we hear there is they actually feel loved within the group too. So thank you, Anya, Denise, and Siobhan for sharing your story there. We will be meeting Siobhan again in a little while. So I'm Helen Forrest, the Director of Nursing Services at the Marie Keating Foundation. And together today with Tara Byrne from Europa Donna, we have a very thought-provoking afternoon in store for you. Thank you to our planning team as well, Liz Yates, our CEO, and Fiona McEntee from Europa Donna, who've contributed to the planning of this event. And never forgetting Pfizer for their educational grant to allow this to happen, but more importantly for the people with metastatic breast cancer, to you in the audience today, and to our panel for sharing your experience with us today, and to our special speakers, Amanda Stavro and Dr. Nicola Elmer as well. So thank you all. So I'm going to get the housekeeping out of the way first. So I suppose the first thing I would say to you is turn off your phones, make this your special time. It is your time. Attendees have no access. As you know, we're all used to Zoom now, where we weren't a couple of years or 1.5 years ago. So if attendees have no access to video or to sound, but we would love you to contribute and participate in our webinar. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or the chat button. But for questions, please use the Q&A button, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you have any comments to make or anything you'd like us to signpost you to, please do that. Have something beside you to drink as well, and a lighter or matches to light your candle if you so wish. Move and stretch. Don't forget, as much as we need to during this session, because it's a long session. We can't see you, so you can do whatever you wish in the background. Have a mat ready to lie down on, or find a place in your home that's nice to relax into at the end of the session, and maybe have a blanket with you as well. So all those things are nice and prepared. This session will be recorded, and the link will be available on YouTube channel by the end of this week. And if we mention any agencies or foundations or resources, Ava will kindly send that out to you with the link also. And I think the most important thing really is to feel connected to what we're about to share together in this room today. So you're all very welcome. Today is our 5th annual Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day. And today for all of us is about reflecting on the effects of metastatic breast cancer on you and your loved ones in challenging times. We all know that breast cancer isn't just pink. And I would invite you to take a look at our campaign this year. Barbara is your spokesperson for metastatic breast cancer. And I must say, she does it so well. And you can follow her on Twitter too. She's quite active there today. Our Metastatic Breast Cancer Day has always been about connecting, and that soothing cuppa with afternoon tea. Since 2016, we have dined in the Kingsley Hotel in Cork, the Richmond Building in Dublin, Hayfield Manor in Cork, House in Dublin, and for the past 2 years online. And we thought that maybe might stop us, but it didn't. So we are still very deserving of that treat. And here is Tara reaching out to you with that symbolism that is so much a part of what we do together. And Tara is here to shine that light. So over to you, Tara.
Thank you, Helen. And good afternoon, everybody. So hopefully you can see me now on the screen. First of all, I just want to say that I think for some people, Helen referenced the beautiful video there at the start. I think for some people there were sound difficulties, but we will absolutely share that video again, because I think you'll enjoy watching it and listening to the ladies in the video. So we will share it again. But like Helen said, we are really thankful to be gathered here again, even if virtually, for the 2nd year in a row. But it's our 6th Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day, which is a global event on the 13th of October each year. And I guess we always like to start our afternoon by remembering those who have passed away since our last event. And of course, as is always the case, far too many people's lives have been cut short in the last year by metastatic breast cancer diagnosis. And whilst the last 18 months have been challenging for many of us for a myriad of reasons, it's particularly difficult for those who have lost loved ones, because we've been catapulted into a completely different grieving process over the last 18 months, a process void of touch, and the connection that has forever been a part of our culture when we are grieving has been ripped away from us. So I guess for all of us this afternoon, it's very special to be able to gather again to celebrate the lives and the love we shared with those in our metastatic breast cancer community. And of course, many of us have lost loved ones just in our own worlds, in our lives too. And we will remember those family and friends today as well. So we always have a candle, and this year we have a candle, and I'm just going to bring it up to the screen now to show you, where we like to think about hope, healing, and remembrance. And that's what we want to think about as we light our candle at the start of our event today. And we also, you will notice, lots of petals around here as well. And I'll just bring the screen a little bit closer and you'll see the petals. And I guess these are rose petals, and the petals are actually a variety. They're called the mixed bunch of rose petals, and they're created from a whole lot of what they call imperfect rose petals. And I thought it was really fitting for us this afternoon, because we are a mixed bunch. We're from all different parts of Ireland and all different walks of life. But of course, we have the one thing in common that brings us together is many on here living with a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis, and others on here supporting those who are living with a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis. So I hope that you have all received a candle in the post as well today, and we would ask that you cherish that candle and also take the time to light it in memory of those who have passed on. And also, always when you look at it, have hope in your heart. So I'm going to light our candle now, and then I think we can all take a moment to remember and reflect, and then Helen will introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Tara. I suppose that before we move into the webinar space, I would just like to follow on from what you've said there, Tara, and know, for people to know, for us all to know, that sadness must always be expressed. Your tears can become your bread of nourishment and healing. And there will be times when there's much to be sad about in your own life and the lives of those you've known and meet. Allow for this. Allow your heart to grieve its losses and letting goes. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Amanda. Amanda, if you'd like to come on screen, that'd be great.
Oh, sorry, I'm struggling here.
Okay, Amanda. So Amanda Stavro is a senior medical social worker at Marymount Hospice, and Amanda will tell you a little bit about herself. And Amanda, we're delighted to have you here today. Thank you so much. I think we've given you a huge remit, and your slides will explain all. So thank you, Amanda. Over to you.
So am I coming up on screen? I'm just checking.
You're on screen now. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So my name is Amanda Stavro, and I'm actually working here in Marymount Hospice for it's probably nearly 20 years actually. And before that, I was in Cork University Hospital as a counsellor for oncology and radiotherapy. and I set up some support groups for women diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. It was part of a multidisciplinary approach, and it was, there I met the most amazing, strong women who actually I was able to meet once again during my time here in Marymount, which makes it extra special actually to be involved today. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the facts, thanks to Europa Donna. These are, breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in women and accounts for 1 in 4 annual cancers worldwide. Now, 21% of breast cancer cases in Europe occur in women when they're only 50 years old, and 35 occur at the age of 59 and 64. And the remaining cases in women above this age. So we can see very clearly that breast cancer affects many women during the years in which they're dedicated to working and raising their families and engaging actively in life, really. Coping with a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer for young women is challenging. 85% of women with metastatic breast cancer wish to have as much information as possible about their disease. And we do meet people that want to know as little as possible. And we will actually try and sort of choose timing and pacing in order to walk beside them until they're ready to engage with it. Everybody's different, as we said earlier. So everybody has different needs for information at different times of their cancer journey. So women also want to be actively involved in decision-making. They want to know how metastatic breast cancer and treatment will impact on their quality of life and their sense of self and their image and many different aspects of their persona. And I suppose returning to work may be a choice for some women, and to others it might be something that they're forced to go back into due to financial pressure. And I'll be talking a little bit about the financial costs of cancer as well. So if we think about our oncology team, I'm sure everybody knows their oncology team by first name. So what do women say? What do they want from their clinicians? Well, most people want to know about how they can alleviate their symptoms, how they can get good quality of life, and most importantly, prolong survival so that they're able to actively engage for as long as possible in the children's lives. And then we look at treatment options. They want to know about what's available in terms of local and systemic therapies, hormonal treatment, and a lot of clinical trials now are being developed, and there seems to be something available for most women in terms of new clinical trials that are coming up. So over the years, there's been advances in treatments. Women have numerous lines of chemotherapy and treatment options. And this has led to more complex decisions for women making regarding their care and regarding their treatment. And these decisions are often time sensitive. There's always something happening in our lives. It might be a confirmation, it might be a wedding, it might be so we have to make decisions bearing in mind what's going on in your life at that time. The other thing is we must balance therapeutic goals, drug toxicities, and the reality of uncertain outcomes. Most women know that if they have their chemo on this day, for the next 3 days, they're going to be very sick and out of it. So you sort of get used to a sort of different rhythm, we will call it a new normal in life at times. There's also a need for opportunities for women with metastatic breast cancer to have their questions and their concerns answered by the oncology multidisciplinary team. So what helps women with metastatic breast cancer? Well, the research shows that understanding women's experiences is really important. Everybody's journey is unique to them, so it's really important that we hear it. It's important to provide them with adequate information, to be actively involved in decision-making and symptom management, and usually survival rate and how longevity is a major priority for women with children. Information on clinical trials, information regarding quality of life, and support when talking to the children. So what do women ask when they have metastatic breast cancer? What are their informational needs? Well, they ask, some women ask about prognosis. Some women ask about symptom management and pain control. Some people want to talk about their regrets or what they might have done differently. Some women want to talk about their quality of life and how it will be affected, clinical trials, palliative care and advanced directives. And the biggest one, I think, is living with uncertainty. It's very, very hard for a lot of women. And we sort of looked at what is quality of life? Well, quality of life is different for everybody. And usually what the person says it is. For me, good quality of life is I like to exercise regularly, I like to go on holiday, and I like to go out for nice meals because I'm not very domesticated and I don't like cooking. For somebody else, it is completely different. So it relates to a person's subjective satisfaction of life, and it's influenced by aspects of personhood such as physical aspects, psychological well-being, social and spiritual well-being. So quality of life is completely different for everybody. So I found a very interesting article in the Journal of Psychosocial Oncology. It was actually very recent as well. It was in 2020, and it looked at a study of women with metastatic breast cancer. And they interviewed a young woman with a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer. And it spoke about, with prolonged survival rates for women with metastatic breast cancer, the question of their quality of life has arisen. So 9 women took part in this study, and the following themes emerged. So, what are the thoughts and the tasks? What are in terms of quality of life? What do they need with the diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer? Well, initially, the thoughts and tasks and feelings are, oh, this really shouldn't be happening. This involves the challenges of treatment, the side effects, early menopause, and so on. They also worry about strategizing disclosure. How much do I tell? Who do I tell? When do I tell about this being a secondary complicated metastatic disease? My children are only tiny and don't understand what metastatic cancer means. I need to maybe not engage with them with too much information, as we will hear from one of our speakers today, Lucy. She has a lovely story to tell about her little 4-year-old twins, which I'm looking forward to hearing. The other thing, as we will talk about later, the benefits of mindfulness, support groups, art therapy, support groups like Europa Donna, like positive living. These are all, types of mindfulness that keep women connected and help them to meet other women who are facing a similar challenge. Other things I think about is contemplating the future, living with uncertainty, living from scan to scan. I think Lucy again talks a little bit about that in her journey. Financial planning, procuring the life insurance, house insurance, retirement funds. And I know that Siobhan will be talking a little bit about that in terms of what the challenges she faced when she had to face retirement. Looking at end-of-life planning, some of the people in the study, they spoke about being afraid that they won't be remembered and that their legacy that they left behind will be forgotten. And I know Carl will be speaking a little bit about that, which I'm really looking forward to. Others will consider the afterlife, challenges in spirituality, and very importantly, the importance of hope and living well in the face of metastatic breast cancer. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my work in the hospice. Actually involves a lot of direct work with children and young families and supporting parents in their talking to their children. And we always say parents are actually the experts when it comes to their own children. And so parents, as a result, are best placed to talking to their own children, to inform them of any changes that have taken place or any worries or concerns that they might have. And sometimes it might give a little bit of a suggestion if it's too overwhelming, such as, so what have you noticed already? And children might respond, well, Mum's sleeping a lot when she when she comes back from the hospital. And I notice her arm is a bit swollen. So start with what they've noticed. It's always a good point. And always ask the teenagers. They probably also sought out the services of Dr. Google. So ask of them, what did they know about this? So when working with children, when working with parents, it's really important that children are giving age-appropriate information, different stages of the metastatic breast cancer trajectory. Sometimes children need support communicating with their parents and siblings. Sometimes children need peer support to set off feelings of isolation. And children need a safe place to share their feelings and concerns. Children may, at some stage, need tailored support to cope with distress, and children may need specialized support as the disease progresses. I think one of the hardest times for me working with young people is working with teenagers, because one of the tasks of being a teenager is to separate out from your parents and to develop an ambivalent relationship. It complicates the relationship. So I always find that just to be aware of the needs of teenagers would be very important. So important information for parents to be aware of. I think it's really important to be aware of the physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral changes children may exhibit. Small children, when they don't know what's going on, or when they're concerned or worried about something, they often present as having stomach aches or headaches, or just generally being a little bit needing lots of hugs and reassurance. There's lots of different books and workbooks. I'll show you a little bit of that I work with at the end, that can help with sharing the information or telling about the information. Workbooks and different mediums can be used to express their children's feelings and concerns. And some children won't engage, just to be aware of that. Most teenagers and preteens will turn to Dr. Google. So, important information for parents. For younger children, their play may revolve around hospitals and doctors as they work through their understanding of what's happening. I'll always remember when I had my third child, my children were always asking, where was this new baby going to come from? Well, thank goodness I had 3 cesareans. So I explained to them that actually Thomas was actually going to, the doctor was going to cut me down here, and he's going to pull him out and it'd be perfect. So when I got home a few weeks later, they were actually, my son Thomas was performing a cesarean section on Nicola, who was only 2.5 at the time. And he had a mask on, it was all very serious. So sometimes children through their play and through their interactions with others will actually tell you what's happening or try and work it out themselves. Model open and honest feelings. I might say, I'm crying today because I'm really sad and I'm really, really tired because the chemo seems to be really hard this week or this time. Or we might even say, and remember to focus on positive feelings, such as, oh, I'm really laughing because I remember when you were a baby and you were just always so happy and giggly and fun. Involve other relatives, family and friends, and tell the school what's happening. But always ask your children first, because sometimes children don't like the school to be knowing. They would just want to be treated as normal and not different from everybody else. Now, just looking. So, in terms of supporting partners and carers, I looked at another study that explored the experience of men whose female partners had a diagnosis of breast cancer and had dependents living at home. So this study was also a very small study, but rich in the way that it was presented. They looked at 8 males whose partners had undergone an oncological treatment in a breast care clinic in Malta. And the following themes actually arose. So most believe it was important to support their partners in very practical ways, such as hospital appointments, and being very careful not to impose their wishes or opinions when it came to treatment-related decisions. As one person commented, we're excellent at giving practical support, but hopeless when it comes to emotional support. I see you all nodding. I think there might be a few husbands like that out there. Being excluded by a partner after surgery. This was seen as very, very common. During the period after breast surgery, all participants commented that they felt very much alone and worried how the actual surgery had impacted on their partner's well-being. Some felt awkward speaking to family members or friends because they kind of wanted to protect them and not add to. They found it very personal and didn't want to add or make things worse. With regards to the impact on the children, this was another concern of the partners of the women who were diagnosed with breast cancer. They all agreed that the diagnosis affected everybody in the family, all family members. Nobody really escaped it. All agreed that it was important to find the right time and place to disclose the diagnosis to their children. All were concerned how the illness and management would affect the children from very small infants to adolescents. These included concerns around their psychological well-being and their academic achievements. I have a little girl that's coming into me. She's actually just finished her university and her mum had metastatic breast cancer. And she spoke about how actually through her entire leaving cert, her mother was getting treatments, getting scans, and she did incredibly well. And she did incredibly well in her university degrees. She was always talking about, it was always sort of marred a little bit by her going into hospital or having something done. And it kind of, she felt like, she actually felt so proud that she did so well in light of what, her mother was going through. And the two of them were very, very close. And I think one of the wonderful things about this particular research paper that I read is the talk of the individual couple and the couple growing as a result of this experience. And they talk about emotional growing together as a couple. The majority of those interviewed expected a degree of psychological growth both as individuals and as a couple. Priorities and outlook on life changed, and they felt more in touch with their emotions. And some felt a sense of pride and resilience in relation to their partners and found the whole experience was in fact life-changing. And spirituality was important for some. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit, I hope I'm not going over time, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost of a cancer diagnosis. And this information I've actually downloaded from the Irish Cancer Society, and they did quite an extensive study on families, carers, and women with metastatic breast cancer. So when we think about metastatic breast cancer, we forget that families across the country are thrown into financial debt, struggling to make ends meet and trying to face a financial, very uncertain future. So according to the research conducted by the Irish Cancer Society, patients have had to make choices over which bills to pay and actually putting food on the table. So the financial costs of cancer show that the average additional cost associated with the cancer diagnosis is in fact €756 per month, with many facing outgoings of up to €1,000 a month. For example, medicine and medical expenses, an extra €261 per month, hospital stays that can't be claimed, €288 per month, consultants' fees, a quarter paid €135 per month, physio, gym, charges were €81 per month, hospital appointments, parking, food, petrol, all these tiny things all amount up. That's another €291 per month. That's a lot of money. It's a very expensive, cancer to have. So the cost associated with cancer, it falls into 6 categories. We have medical expenses that can't be claimed back. So just things like over-the-counter medication, GP visits, special dressings, A&E charges, treatments overseas, and dental care. Added costs during treatment and appointments, such as taxi fares, public transport, petrol to and from appointments, car park charges. The list is endless. And also some people live far away. They live in the rural areas, so they have to pay for accommodation or B&Bs if there's nothing like Blue Columbanus close by. So increases in day-to-day living expenses, for example, household heating, childcare costs, phone, broadband subscription services. We have one-off payment purchases such as wigs, headwear, new clothes, compression garments, fabric support dressings, equipment, commodes, household adaptations, ramps, stair lifts, the list goes on. Additional personal care costs such as mouth care, specialist shampoo, creams, absorption pairs, specific supportive clothing, and other costs such as transport, drinks, food, and things like that. So in the words of one participant, being self-employed, it was extremely difficult to access social welfare support. I closed my business, I paid off my creditors and had nothing left. It took me 5 months for my wife's carers allowance application to be approved. And even though it was backdated, that 5 months was a real struggle, and we had very little income and very high expenses. So just to say, I've been working with this group for the last few weeks. I've met some beautiful women, I've heard some fantastic stories, and I'm very much honoured to have been a part of it. And the things that I think we've learned along the way is just to treasure each day, to spend meaningful time with our children, to create everyday memories. When children come to me and they want to remember their mothers, and I make a little memory jar with them. It's not the holidays in Disneyland that they talk about. It's actually the everyday things. They're tucking me into bed, they're reading a story, they're walking in the park and holding hands. It's the everyday things. To take breaks from your sad feelings, because we can't be sad all of the time. We have to take time out to have fun. We say we have to treat our sadness and our grief like a job. You can't work 24/7. You have to take breaks. Don't forget to dance and sing. Look for support groups that invigorate you. And just to let you know that our lives with working with you are very much richer for knowing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. That was, yeah, it was a real whirlwind of what's happening, isn't it, for people out there? And I know within the group and within our panelist discussion, we're going to cover a lot of these topics from those who've experienced them. So if it's okay with you, Amanda, we will leave questions for you. I might take maybe I'll see if there's any one or two there now. But what we'll do is we'll maybe, I understand the video wasn't heard at the beginning, so I'll probably play that again so that people can actually have hear it and just hear what three lovely ladies are saying. We'll have a tea break and we'll listen to the Riptide movement. I'll be there. And you'll notice that there is a donate button on that video. You're not obliged to donate, but it's a script from the Concert for Cancer that we played earlier on in August of this year. But it is a really fitting type of music that will resonate with people. So that's what I think we'll do for now. And then I think we're ahead of schedule here. So I'll play this music first. So let me do that. I'll play the video again. This time I might share sound, it might work. So thank you, Amanda, for that. It was lovely. So let's go back to here and see if we can play our video. Just bear with me a minute. Okay, so I have to go back. Sorry about this. That's a little bit of a refresher from what you've said, Amanda. So do let me know, Amanda, can you let me know if you can hear this video? Yeah, great. Thank you.
To meet in real life, isn't it?
Anybody like a cup of tea?
I'd love a cup of tea, thanks.
Yeah,
Sonia.
thanks, Sonia. Yeah, great.
How long are you in the group, Anya?
I'm in the group about is it 3 years now? Wow. Yeah. Kind of wandered in and out of groups with breast cancer. You know, they were talking about the end of treatment, returning to work. But for me, I thought, I'm not actually afraid to say I'm stage 4 and I'm incurable. And the fact that the Marie Keating set up a group specifically for metastatic breast cancer led me to believe, well, they know that we actually really do need something more.
This week last year, actually, exactly today, I thought I had a slip disc. And I went into Blackrock and discovered that it was a lot more than a slip disc. I went from orthopedics to oncology very quickly. And I came out of hospital with a fairly grim view on life. I rang the Marie Keating Foundation and she suggested the positive living group. Coming from a negative to a positive, it's turned it all on its head.
When I was diagnosed metastatic, I felt I really needed the support. So at first you're thinking, okay, this is the end, it's terminal, and you know, but actually when you see everybody in the group, it shows you that it's a gift actually to come up against your own mortality because you recognise every day is important.
With my family and my friends, you know, they don't quite understand where you're at. So you find yourself in this group of like-minded people. It's a shared interest, unfortunately. It's a fairly terminal interest, but you know what, we can at least have a laugh about it as well.
I honestly feel that I could pick up the phone and speak to anybody in that group at any time and they would be there for me and they'd understand. I feel very secure in the group as well in terms of medical support with Helen being a nurse and an oncology nurse. I think that's very important.
She has a very gentle group management style and I feel that if I had an issue in the group, I would get a phone call from Helen afterwards to say, how are you doing? It sounded like you needed a bit of extra help. What can I do? And that is huge.
I actually feel very loved.
Yes, very loved.
By that group. You know, some of the sessions are great fun. And then there's some tougher ones, you know, conversations with the palliative care nurse.
If you know there's a topic coming up, lots of people don't join because they're going, oh, I don't want to know anything about that. But if you join in, it takes that fear away.
It does.
When we do meet and somebody has passed, you know, Helen does go around the group and ask how everybody is feeling. We have a little group meeting. We light a candle in remembrance of the ladies who have been there. We talk about them. You know, it is probably the most difficult part of being in the group, really.
It's nice to have a group that fear is managed as well. You know, it's part of it, but it's managed.
The consultant is giving you medication to save your life, so why would you go around spending your life being miserable? So get out there and enjoy it.
Get out and enjoy it, absolutely. I think the three of us are going to be pretty good at doing that, actually.
I think so.
So I think that was definitely worthy of a replay. Thank you, Anya, Denise, and Siobhan for being a part of that. It's lovely, I think, for us to hear that people, you know, these ladies feel loved within the group, but they actually do that for each other. There's a huge amount of tender loving care within that group. They do it for each other, and that's what's really important. And you'll see that when we start having our panel discussion. I'd also like to mention, you know, Connect Metastatic Breast Cancer Group. They're a very powerful, caring group as well, all connected through, you know, Europa Donna and positive living through the Marie Keating Foundation. And actually they interconnect as well, which is really, really important. And sometimes it can be different strokes for different folks, you know, different people want different things and they find it, and that's what's good. But we need more of that in our world. We need more of that in our metastatic breast cancer awareness world. So now I think what I'd like to do is share our Riptide Movement song. So just bear with me a minute and I'll try and make sure the sound is on. I think it is. So we need to go back to the start here. And hopefully we'll move on from that, we've done all of that. So after our tea break, and we'll just maybe take maybe 10 minutes for people once we've heard the song. We'll be back here anyway. So let me see what time we finish the song, and then we probably come back at it's quarter to 3. So maybe we'll come back at maybe 5 to 3 and carry on with our. I think it'll be a very interesting discussion for the afternoon. As I said, there's a lot of donate buttons coming up on screen, but please don't feel obliged to donate. It is a lovely song. It will draw you in, and it says, I'll be there. And actually, this is what today is about. We will all be there. We'll be there for you, and we'll be there every step of the way. So just bear with me while I get this sound moving on this. We're nearly there. I think before that as well, I'd kind of like to re-emphasize maybe some of the things that Amanda had said there, you know, and I think we would all agree with, you know, that these are gifts we have learned along the way to treasure every day, to spend meaningful time with our children, to create everyday memories, to take breaks from your sad feelings. Don't forget to dance and sing. Look for support groups that invigorate you, and our lives are richer for knowing you. So just remembering that before you go off on your tea break. So here we are, Riptide Movement, and I'll be there.
Can't get out of bed this morning, and my heart is breaking, and it's me picking up the pieces, and you can't save me, 'cause I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. But either way you look at it, I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you to your darkest moments. And yeah, every day's like these when nothing goes your way. Cause you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter what they say, just take no notice, 'cause I'll be there for you to your darkest moments. And yeah, every day's like these when nothing goes your way. Oh, I'll be there for you to your darkest moments.
Okay, we're back online. I hope everybody has got all the refreshments they need, moved around, and hopefully got something comfortable to lie on and a blanket as we move into the second part of our webinar. Amanda, I'm hoping it will be okay to share your slides. We've had an ask in the chats there if it's okay to share your slides, even though we will be, recording the webinar as well as we are. Would that be okay with you, Amanda?
No problem at all.
Great. I think there was a lot of information in there. We covered an awful lot around, the diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer, the aims of the clinician, advances in treatment, what help women and men indeed need, quality of life issues, the connection between parents and children and even schools. I know a lady mentioned something in the chat there that she felt children maybe didn't need to be asked for permission to, talk to teachers in schools. But again, I guess that's a conversation you have, and we'll talk about that actually in the panel discussion. And obviously the really important issue of financial difficulties, leading on to, again, the pillars of support that are out there for us. So hopefully we'll get a very true, honest discussion going here about many of the topics that you have discussed there, Amanda. So I suppose without further ado, I would now like to open the panel for discussion. I would firstly like to invite Siobhan Gaynor in. You met Siobhan there on our first video, if you didn't hear, but we got to see you twice, Siobhan, so that was fantastic. You're very welcome, Siobhan.
Thank you, Helen. Very glad to be here.
Lovely to have you in a different space today, actually. So we're always on the Positive Living screen, and Siobhan is always up on my top left-hand corner. You're still there today. So Siobhan, I'm just going to say a little bit about you, if that's okay.
Sure.
So Siobhan is a scientist by profession and has worked in medicines research and development, including clinical trials and program management for over 30 years. And indeed, Siobhan has worked in Cancer Trials Ireland, where she's helped to set up its quality and training division from 2003 to 2007. And in recent years, she has assisted a number of Irish, UK, and US-based academic startup companies that are developing cell and gene therapy medicines for rare diseases. She has worked with many patient advocates over the years, training many patient organizations in navigating the rules, regulations, and conduct of clinical trials and medicines development. And I'm exhausted after reading that, Siobhan. So it seems like quite a hard job and a difficult job, but I'm sure you loved it. I know you loved it throughout. So Siobhan was first diagnosed with breast cancer in May 2019 and had surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and hormone therapy. In October 2020, she was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer and is currently receiving oral chemotherapy and hormone therapy. Siobhan, you're very welcome. We're delighted to have you. It was lovely to watch you on your video there twice. I'll be coming back to you when I've introduced the rest of the panel, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Helen.
Okay, so I am now, I have to say, life gets in the way for some people. Emer is our next guest on our panel. Emer has actually been asked to go into the hospital today. I'll tell you a little bit about Emer. Emer is a 39-year-old primary school teacher from Dublin. And I had a conversation with her this morning because obviously she really wanted to be here, and anybody who knows Emer, and you know her, Siobhan, she was really excited about having her voice heard today. So we're going to do the best we can for her. So yes, worked as a primary school teacher, and Emer, we first met Emer in our Survive and Thrive group, which is for women and anybody with any kind of a primary cancer who has had treatment and come out the other side and are looking for support and guidance into living their new life and living the best quality of life. Emer was that person. So again, within just over a year, she found herself knocking on our door again. It was a very, very difficult time for her. Emer, found herself with metastatic breast cancer and on a different journey altogether. So she was first diagnosed with HER2 positive breast cancer in February 2018 at the age of 35. And after a year of chemo, radiation and surgery and Herceptin, things were looking good for her. But last October, she became very unwell and had to go to hospital, where it was discovered she had brain mets. Subsequently, she's had surgery and radiotherapy again, and it has been quite a debilitating experience for her. So basically what she wanted to do today is to talk about how hard it's been as a single woman, losing her independence and losing her career, as well as dreams and hopes for her future. She can no longer drive and had to move out of her precious house, which she told me she had actually, worked really hard at actually bringing, getting the money together for her deposit. And she'd like to talk about how it made her feel seeing her parents in pain. And having spoken to Emer this morning, we were all overjoyed last week when she said to us, "I'm sorry, I can't turn up for your practice session because I'm going to Lanzarote." And we were all delighted because she was off. She was off with her mum and her dad. But the story unfolds. She felt quite sad and actually quite emotional this morning when she told me that it was painfully hurtful for her to watch her mother looking after her on her holiday. Her father also has leukemia, and she watched her mother tirelessly looking after both her and her father. She swallowed her pride and she got herself a mobility scooter. And she said she really enjoyed her trip, but unfortunately her father couldn't, reach out and do the same. He just wasn't able to do that. So that was quite an emotional change. So basically she said, "I can't walk now either. So I couldn't drive, but I can't walk now." So I think that's been really difficult for her. It's breaking my heart to watch my mother looking after me and my father. She shouldn't have to do that. On the other side, being a primary school teacher, Emer has told us in Positive Living a couple of stories that have really resonated with me. And we are talking about children and we're talking about parents, and we've actually mentioned schools here. So Emer said to me that, maybe some months back, one of the little boys came up to her and said, "Mrs., your cancer back?" And she said, "Yes, it is, but I'm going to the hospital and they're doing everything they can for me." And he said to her, "Good," and he skipped off. And she had another episode last week actually in the school where she had said, she was in to do she's doing a small amount of work with them, just keeping herself engaged and in tune. And she was doing some Halloween practice. And the kids know that Emer has cancer and her cancer is back. But one little boy said to her, "My dad died of cancer when I was 1. And actually Emer discovered through that small conversation that was happening around a table that the teachers had no awareness of this. So the teachers actually took it upon herself to bring her, his mother, and tell his mother that actually her little boy had spoken out this morning about his father being dead and having died from cancer. And his mother was actually really a little bit overjoyed by that because she didn't realize that he could verbalize it. And she was happy that it had been a conversation then that he had with Emer. And you can imagine the interaction that Emer would have had with him, because the reality was he had opened up to Emer because Emer had cancer. And he talked about his father dying, which he had never done before. So that was, I think Emer, I suppose she said she had that special conversation with him. And then his mother rang her to say she was so grateful that interaction had happened. She called it magical because she could never have imagined how it could have happened that way. So I think I leave Emer's story there for us, but I know we will pick up on some of those issues. Lucy, I'd like to call you into the panel now. So here comes Lucy.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Helen.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, Lucy, thank you. So Lucy was first diagnosed at the young age of 29 with primary breast cancer. And Lucy will say herself, she had 8 blissful years in remission, living a healthy and happy lifestyle. Unaware while on hormonal therapy that the length of recurrence would or could even happen. At 38 in 2019, after a dimple trigger, my curiosity, so your curiosity, Lucy, got you a diagnosis with metastatic breast cancer in your glands, your spine, and your ovaries. It was a challenging and lengthy diagnosis, and your gut feelings and your voice, which we can imagine, we know your voice, it's a strong voice, got you there. So you eventually got your diagnosis because it was challenging and because there was difficulties along the way. You're currently on ongoing treatment, which has lots of side effects. And I know you've had numerous visits to hospital of recent as well, Lucy. So thank you for being here. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure to be here.
And now I'd like to introduce Carl Friel. Hi, Carl. How are you?
Hi, guys. Hi.
So, Carl, it's really a privilege for us to have you here today. Thank you for being with us. Carl is husband to Breda, who passed away on the 3rd of August only this year, after 4.5 years of many emotions and struggles. And Breda, as we know, is part of our positive living group, and she enlightened us. She kept us in check. She gave us many pieces of information. The WhatsApp was always hopping with like, you should read this, or you should like click into this link. I know somebody who can help you there. So that's really nice. Carl, you're a dad to 3 kids, Dahi nearly 12, Katie May 10, and Odran 8. Okay, so Carl, you're going to do your best to discuss with us today how you, Breda, and your children managed, how you involved your children along that journey all the way, and including and beyond Breda's death, and how you're getting on now. And I'd like to just share a photograph of Breda, if I may, so that we can all remember her. So there's Emer. We have Lucy on screen, we have Siobhan on screen, and we've got Carl on screen. And here is Breda. So in memory of Breda, may she rest in peace. And I'd also like to just let you all know that we have Dr. Nicola Elmer in the background. Nicola is a senior psychologist in radiation oncology department in St. Luke's in Rathgar. And Nicola is going to be minding us here in the background. We have a lot to discuss. We're going to pick up on a lot of the points that Amanda has made during her discussion. And I'm probably going to put specific questions to you in the panel, but what I think will happen really is that, hi Nicola, how are you? Lovely to see you.
Hi guys.
Yeah, so yeah, well, I'm going to put some questions to you, and we'll have that interaction and that discussion, and we'll see where it takes us. So no pressure at all, just it's your story and you're telling it. Is that all right? So I suppose I'll put my first question to Siobhan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Siobhan, what changes have you made in your life since your metastatic diagnosis?
Thanks, Helen. So yeah, change is the operative word, I would suggest, upon diagnosis with metastatic breast cancer, and particularly having experienced the primary cancer journey. I would suggest the metastatic breast cancer journey is completely different in that it involves every aspect of your life. So from day one, and the first thing I realized was, after the devastation of the diagnosis and the discussion around the medical aspects and scientific aspects, et cetera, there were some decisions that needed to be made. And the first thing I would say to anybody in the same boat is, you're effectively need to triage basically your decision-making capability. And by that, what I mean is, what needs to be thought about now, what can wait till next week, what can wait till next month, because there's an awful lot to it. There's an awful lot to absorb. There's an awful lot to consider, and there's the shock of the diagnosis. So in my case, as you described, Helen, I was very much involved in my career. I loved my career. I was working with a lot of startups in very exciting science, and I felt I just, got to a point in my career where, in many ways, I was finally seeing the reward of all the hard work, and I was getting some nice job offers with some startup companies. And so for me, in fact, because of my career decisions, I had to actually decide straight away if I was going to become involved in basically the dream job, which was on the table at the time. And the dream job was a wonderful opportunity, and it was going to effectively set me up financially and career-wise. And I realized very, very quickly that because of some of the nature of the symptoms, in particular pain and fatigue I was experiencing, it just wasn't going to be possible. So my life in that regard was over. My career life was over. And that happened very quickly. And that was a very tough decision, but it was necessary. I simply couldn't have managed this new startup situation with, mad hours and hiring people and all that it entailed. And so very quickly I had to let the career go. And that was a really difficult one for me because it was a huge part of my identity. Now I have lots of other things going on in my life. I have 3 beautiful children, etc. But just to speak about the career, because I found that really, really tough. And effectively I was switching, as far as I was concerned, from being having a good career and really enjoying it to effectively being a patient. And that for me was a massive trauma, both emotionally and psychologically, but actually financially as well. It was a huge issue. And unfortunately, I did not have, permanent health insurance or critical illness, simply because I was going through a phase of my life that was very expensive. Children are expensive. And so unfortunately, I didn't have that financial security to back me up, but nonetheless, I was forced into making it. So I took the decision then thereafter to do some consultancy work, which was very helpful in that it was flexible and could work around me and my medical appointments, of which there were many and still continue to be. It's almost a full-time job being a patient with metastatic breast cancer. So I'm sure many people can resonate with that thought.
And I would just like to add something in there, and Lucy, you might back me up on this as well, but being part of the Positive Living group, I could hello Emer. Being part of the Positive Living group, we could see that real difficulty you were having when you were trying to make that decision. You did openly express your thoughts and feelings around it, but it was a really difficult time for you. And I guess, the isolation in COVID as well. So I think we need to acknowledge that difficulty, and we need to really acknowledge and listen very closely to what you experienced and that loss of identity.
Yes, please. No, just a cup of tea.
Emer, hello.
Hi, Emer. Yeah, definitely, Helen, I would totally agree with that. And I think for Siobhan and many like us, it's the loss of identity as a person, more so that it affects us without even realising it. You don't realise that till very late. You realise that it's about the career and it's about the work and it's the focus and having a purpose in the morning, Siobhan. I think that's where it was with you as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I felt a bit angry that, all my years, particularly as a woman, when I started working in the early 90s, the role models weren't there in terms of, the levels I was working at. And I felt I'd as well as my family, had put up with lots of traveling abroad, lots of late nights. And, frankly, the payoff was just being taken off the table for me, both financially and, career-wise. And I felt what I was doing was important. So lots of issues around that. So anyway, I decided to go down the consultancy route. But again, as the reality of living with it and, enduring all of the various aspects and the time and the symptoms and the side effects, I realized really in the last few months, I'm actually not able to work anymore, physically and emotionally. And I'm actually, going down the road of trying to retire early on grounds of ill health. Which is another aspect to all of this in terms of looking for support. So I'm like many of you in that I've worked full time. I've never engaged with, social supports of any nature. And suddenly I'm thrown into this world of being a patient with a huge decrease in income and all of the financial costs that were talked about earlier that incurs being a patient. And on top of it all, I'm struggling to engage with some of the aspects around how do I do this? What financial support is there for me from the state? I've described already, I didn't have the private health insurance, but also, frankly, getting my pensions. I worked in many private companies, different occupational pensions, and it's not straightforward to draw them down when you're retiring early on health grounds, nor is it still clear to me yet if I can actually take all the money, because all the algorithms that all the insurance companies use, etc., around pensions are on, the assumption that you're going to have a full life and live to a normal age, and that clearly isn't the case for women in our situation and men. So unfortunately, the system doesn't cope too well with what is actually an uncertain timeline, but clearly I will not be, so I'm not clear yet whether I will be able to actually draw down all of the money I put in over the years. So that's the reality.
That's the reality, and it's like hugely disappointing, isn't it, when you find yourself in that situation. I know you've done quite a bit though, Siobhan, to actually to manage yourself, and in that I know you've actually received some psycho-oncology counselling, which I think would be really good to hear about.
Yeah, so kind of my approach from day one has always been, well, first of all, find out what's available to you. And secondly, if you're offered anything or if you find anything, just say yes. I've never been to a psychologist before in my life, thankfully, hadn't felt the need, but I recognize that the diagnosis is particularly traumatic, and, all of the issues around it, and in particular, the emotional side, the family side. My kids are all teenagers, all of that stuff. And, there's huge anxiety. So I very gladly took up the offer of seeing a psycho-oncologist who'd only just started, in fact, in the Mater Hospital. So I was very lucky timing wise. So my approach has always been say yes, and see where that leads you. Even if you feel maybe it's not for you, give it a shot. And I actually found that very helpful and very useful, even though I might have had some prejudices going into it. So my approach has just been, say yes and see what's out there. And there are supports, and you have to dig around a little bit. So I think the whole approach of, you described earlier, Helen, about self-management, in terms of, you taking the reins around what you want to do, when you want to do it, getting to know your medical aspects, the financial aspects. There's a lot to it. Take your time, but actually, always can remember that at the end of the day, you can say yes and you can say no. And actually, that's within your gift. That's something that you can do for yourself. And that's actually quite powerful.
Yeah, indeed it is. And I think self-management and being in control is really important for you, isn't it, for all of you on the panel?
It is. And one of the things I decided to do as well, speaking further to that message is, I decided that, right, okay, so I'm not going to be working in a traditional job. I'm just not able for it, but I'm actually going to get involved around awareness, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, but also I'm also working with Cancer Trials Ireland and talking to various funders about setting up some patient-led research. So for me, the dilemma was I've worked in this space all my life. I understand it. I understand how medicines are developed. I understand the research process. I'm now a patient. How am I going to reconfigure myself in this new me? And the new me is trying to get involved insofar as I can, and stay active and use my brain still, I hope.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you, Siobhan. I'm going to move over to Lucy for a minute, but we can have that conversation and interact. Lucy, I suppose a similar story to Siobhan and to Emer, in that you originally had primary breast cancer, and you find yourself now like 8 years down the line with metastatic breast cancer. How has that made you feel?
Do you know what, Helen, it changes day to day. I think at the start, your body's in shock. I definitely think it's a shock situation that you're in at the start, and you're in the actual comfort zone of getting through what you need to get through. But when you come out of I always say that the aftermath is a million times worse. When you're in the appointments, you're having all your operations, you're absolutely so busy dealing with all of that, but it's the aftermath when you sit at home and you think about what really happened. Then I think that's where people start struggling. I think that's when I definitely struggled, because I was very much used to nothing. I had one appointment a year. I had, when I had primary, very much you had an end date. You had your chemo, that was ending. You have your operation, it's ending. You always had a goal at the end and you knew it was going to end. And that's where the differentiation is huge in comparison to secondary. Because with your secondary, unfortunately, you may not have an end date. While people talk about you going off treatment, you'll be going back on to another one. And they make that very clear at the start. While I'm very much a believer in miracles, and I'm very much a believer that we can all see miracles happening, I'm very much living in the real world as well as to say that I will continue on treatment forever, which sometimes I find that very hard to deal with. However, I do think you have to set your own goals. So we do live 3 months to 3 months. Our scans are done every 3 months. So that's quite tough. You live with a lot of anxiety for a good few weeks coming up to the scans. I call it scan anxiety. And it's very well known now because it's very natural. It's a feeling that everybody has, but you still don't want to have to go there every month, but it just your body is taken over by it. And then you nearly live your life completely to the maximum for the next 2 months because it's kind of like a comfort zone. And then you go back into that, it's coming up again. What will happen? Will they find something? What's going to happen if I need something else? And when you get the stable scan, you can rejoice again for a while. And, there's a lot of things that can go on in the meantime. There are things you learn to deal with. You kind of have to become a stronger person by learning to deal with things that could go wrong within it because all you're hoping for is a stable scan. So the difference between primary and secondary, I'd just like to talk a little bit about that because I think it's huge and I think it's so important to make it awareness to people out there. Like Siobhan said, I love awareness as well. I love helping people by teaching them and telling our stories because it's so important that there's no word you can put on the difference between the secondary. It's a completely different diagnosis. It's something that you never thought you're going to have. I suppose nobody wants to hear the words of metastatic or incurable or terminal. And there's lots of different words you can put on it. Everyone chooses their own, but I suppose it's just it's a diagnosis that needs to be made more awareness out there with it as well. There's not at the moment, there isn't as much as we'd like to. It's a scary setting as such, but then you have to learn to live with it. It's the living with it. And I think through positive living, we've learned so much. I'm only in your positive living nearly a year, and the things we've learned through each other and with your help, Helen, as well, that we've learned to live so much more positively about things because we have that group.
And Lucy, what would be the most important thing that you might have learned in that group?
Like sharing and talking about everything. And, listening to other people's stories. I found listening to other people's stories at the start, I found it very raw and I found it quite emotional. But then after a few months, I found it refreshing that we can actually help each other. We can teach each other and we can help each other about different ailments, like even different side effects that I wouldn't have known about. And no one can answer my side effects questions. But I go into our group and some of the women have already had it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fantastic because no doctor, no nurse out there knew what it was, but I find out from my support group that someone else has it, so I link in with them.
Yeah, it's
kindness, compassion, love. Like compassion is something that sometimes is missed in the medical field, so that's why support groups are so important.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy. And I suppose we're going to talk about, Amanda mentioned parenting children. We know that you have 2 beautiful 4-year-old twins.
I do.
How do you manage your emotions in that space?
I suppose for me, I was diagnosed when they were just 2. So they were still quite young. I found at that point we didn't have to have conversations with them. My whole thing was back then that security and protection for the girls. That was my biggest aim. I could deal with the treatment, I could deal with the side effects, I could deal with any hospital visit. I was like a powerhouse. I was like, this is it, they're 2. But as they get older, it becomes very different. As they get older, their speech, they're so much more aware now. As they start growing up, that changes. I always have this thing in my head where up until maybe last year, little shoulders were not built for adult problems. And that was fine because they were small. I have lymphedema in my arms. So because I had my glands taken out this time, after the operation, I couldn't lift them any longer. So I was told that I'd be never to be able to lift them on this side. And that was, for me, I actually didn't mind that. I said, look, if that's what it is, that's what we have to go through. But I would teach them, I would always say to them, now mommy's arm is quite sore. Mommy's arm is sore, so mommy can't lift you today. And that, you know what? Kids are so resilient. They dealt with it. they get lifted by everybody else because they were small. So then we grew independence with them. We got them to be a little bit more independent. They were getting in and out of their own car seats. I kind of reinforced it with anyone that was around them in our network. I had to make sure, don't lift them now, they're 4. They don't need to be lifted. And then a lot of questions come up recently in the last 6 months. Is your arm ever going to get any better, Mammy? Is your arm better now? Lift me up. I want to see that fridge, because they want a treat in the fridge. And I'd say, well, you know, Mammy can't lift you up. And I have to be honest now. I have to be honest by saying, I can't keep saying, I say, Mammy will put on her big plaster, but Mammy won't be able to lift you. And they are fine. They walk away, they go and get someone else to lift them up, because kids are resilient. But I have to now be honest, which I find I struggle with that sometimes, because obviously my diagnosis was so much easier because they were small and they were 2. There was no need to be having these conversations. But as they get older, it's something now I have to bring into our lives, and I have to bring into their lives very, very slowly, because I find they're still very young. They don't need to know. So for my treatment days or my hospital stage, which have been very, very frequent lately, and we never had that, I make sure that their lives are not impacted. Their routine stays the same. People don't discuss negative talks around them. I make sure that negativity is not brought into them, because they are going to get worried and they are going to get scared unnecessary, because I come home. I have treatment once a month. I'm not in there for long periods of time. I think if the hair has to go and things, that will be a conversation we will have to have. Kind of prepared myself for that. But at the moment, they're in a creche lifestyle. I see them every day. They're around the same people. So I do find myself, I put myself under that pressure to make sure their lives are not changing, because it doesn't have to right now. But there will come a point when it may have to. And again, as a person, I know I'll struggle with that. I think that's a big, huge struggle that I know I'm going to have to deal with. But for now, I live in that comfort zone of, Mammy has a band. She wears a big, huge plaster. And will it ever get better? Lucia says to me the other day. And I said, it may not get better, but that's what we have plasters for. And then she just toddles on and starts laughing, which I find so refreshing. You can't make it a big deal. I think the more stress that's brought into their lives would upset me more. I really don't think children that young need to be told the bigger elements of life. Mammy has a sore arm, she can't lift you. The tiredness, because they don't see me being tired, I'm able to deal with the tiredness, but them not being, they're in preschool. I chose to put them into a creche for a longer period of time, which was never my goal in life, to have them in a creche environment. But unfortunately, that's what I do to protect them, so that I can go to my appointments and I can have that really, really happy space, because I've rested during the day. Now, that's something that I never thought I would actually do, and I don't enjoy it. But I think it's best for them. It's protection for them. They have a happier life. They're learning lots. Then they're home with me when I have full capability with them. And I still get to go to my treatment, and their routine is not disturbed, and they're not going from, different houses, and they're not having to go to other people's houses and be with them and changing routine. Because I think until they get a bit older, that may evolve. And I will wait till it has to evolve, I think.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Lucy. And they're great guitar players, I believe, aren't they?
They are. They're great with their music. I have big goals for them. I have big goals. I tell them every day what I want them to be.
Very good. And that brings me nicely in to have a chat with you, Carl. Carl, Breda left a legacy. We know what that legacy is, but I guess you need to talk that legacy to us and the reality of that.
Yeah, I suppose in respect to Breda, one of the things she warned us all as much as anything to never forget her.
And we're not forgetting her, because she warned us as well. In the Positive Living group, she asked us to keep talking about her, and that's why we're talking about it today. Yeah.
Apologies. So yeah, just to keep talking about her, and to remember her. Remember the positivity she had, the fact that she helped so many other people. Give me a second, sorry.
Yeah.
And the Positive Living group, I think it was mentioned by Lucy there about the about helping each other and the ability to, I suppose, share stories, share experiences, and that awareness that is within the group, for example. And as I said, I think a lot of the things that Breda towards the end started to do. I think it was a process over a couple of years, maybe actually, and it seems to have something that maybe she's picked up from the likes of your group, the Positive Living Group, and others, is the fact that she planted seeds all of the time in relation to, for example, I'm just looking at the cup of tea I have here at the minute. It's got butterflies on it. And one of the things Breda did at the very end, it's actually when Breda passed, it was only afterwards we realized what she'd been doing. We noticed all around the house butterflies. So no one of us until the time of the wake realized what had been going on. She had been doing it for quite a few years without telling anybody, up until literally within a couple of weeks of Breda passing away. She continually repeated something, and it wasn't until afterwards that we realized, and even now today, that we realized what she'd been doing. She'd been planting seeds, and what she asked for us closest to her to do was, including her friends and family, and she even I have recordings of her saying this, is to remember me by 5 things. Remember me by rainbows, butterflies, white feathers, sunsets, and sunrises. So she had been planting these for so long around the house, the butterflies. But every time we go for a walk, literally I went for a walk today, and I saw white feathers. And it was like, it was this, so she had been planting these with friends, with family all of the time. And it was her way of saying, remember me. Because every time you see a rainbow now, the amount of friends that text me now, I saw a rainbow today. First thing I thought about was Breda. I saw a white feather today first. Last night we went to the Ireland game last night. We drove up all together, myself and the 3 kids, and I stepped out of the car in Dublin. First thing I noticed on the ground was a white feather. And it was like she's saying, I'm here, I'm always going to be with you. And that's what she said, and that's what she done. And so it's the kids now, every time they see the rainbow or a sunrise or sunset or butterfly, and it's just truly amazing. And I'm not sure where that's came from, and if it is something that I think she did get it from, help and talking to others, that I think it's truly amazing, the fact that if that's her way. On her eulogy, for example, on the eulogy that I did at the funeral, another thing she got from, and I know who she got it from, it was from a lady called Geraldine Mullen. I'm sure everybody might be aware of the tragic situation with Geraldine Mullen a couple of years ago up here in Donegal, where she lost her 2 kids and her husband in a tragic accident in the Foyle River. Geraldine is an oncology nurse in Letterkenny, and Breda unfortunately had to go to Letterkenny towards the end, even though she was being treated in Galway the whole time. And she came across Geraldine and had long talks with Geraldine about basically around death and her experiences. And Geraldine said something to her, and Breda repeated this also, and it was really important for me. And it's only looking back on it now is that I had it in my eulogy because it just stuck with me, is that a person, Geraldine said this to Breda, a person dies twice, once when the physical body dies, and the second time when everyone stops saying their name. So she asked everybody, don't stop saying my name. And so now we don't stop saying her name, we don't stop thinking of her, and going back to those remembering me by rainbows, butterflies, white feathers, sunsets. So we have so many opportunities now as family and friends to always remember, if you know what I mean. I think that's just really phenomenal, really. That legacy, again, going back to what you said, she has, and that's for me, for her friends, and for 3 young kids that's there now.
That they see her in that light, and it's really light. It's positive, isn't it? It's
comforting, I think. Yeah, it's such a comfort. For me and the kids. Going back to what Lucy was saying, at their age, my kids are young too. 8, 10 and 12, and the impact it's going to have in their futures, that I really do believe they have a sense of Breda is with them, their mum is with them.
The signs are there, Carol, aren't they? The signs, she's sending the signs.
Yeah, I find it amazing that she has used those 5 things to say that I'm going to be with you, I'm an angel in heaven, and I'm going to be sending you signs, and when you see those signs, you'll be thinking of me, and that I'm looking out for you, and I'm going to be there and helping you through whatever situation you have in your futures, whether that's a positive one or a negative one. I'm going to be there to help you, and that's a seriously positive thing. That a legacy, again, go back to to remember her by, that I think is truly amazing, to be quite honest.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for that. I'm going to bring Emer in there now as I see her. This is amazing, Emer, that you've got yourself into hospital and you've got yourself on screen.
That's it from my hospital. I want to apologize to everyone for I disturbed I didn't realize I wasn't on mute, and the woman came in to ask me, did I want a cup of tea? And so they know now I'm on this, because I've just had bloods taken, so it'll be an hour before the doctor comes near me. So I'm in an isolation room after being away. So I want to say I'm sorry I missed Lucy and Siobhan's pieces, and I heard the end of Carol's, and I want to send my sympathies to Carol. I think he spoke very well, and he said a lot of true things, you know, about that lady who'd lost her 2 children. So I am thinking of him and his kids and everyone. So delighted that I've managed to get on.
Yeah, thanks, Emer. Emer, I did share your story after the conversation we'd had this morning. I wouldn't have done it the same justice as you did, but I think, like, you know, some of the issues that really we wanted to look at, and I know you have a huge, you know, emotional and hurt around, I suppose, your mom having to look after you at the moment, and your loss of independence, loss, you know, your loss of childlessness, all your hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
If you want to talk that through, please do.
Yeah, well, I suppose I always wanted to be a mother all my life, you know, and even like I didn't have much luck with relationships, you know, got to 35, but I still had hope because I was always a positive person. And then, you know, the way you hear all these stories of people having babies later in life. So I still believed it could happen to me. But then at 35, I got the breast cancer diagnosis. But in a way, like, I've made the best of it. I've lots of special children in my life. Like my friends' children are very special for me. I have a little godchild. I have my cousin's kids. They're very special to me. I have 2 of them making the communion this weekend, so hopefully I'll be out of here. And then the kids in the school mean so much to me. So that's been a way of, but you know, it's still a hurt. And that, you know, it's a sad part that you're leaving nothing behind really as well, that I kind of feel, you know, I'll be gone. And I'm very upset for my mum. You know, she's very good, what she's going through. So I know a few of you know, I've had to move back home because of the situation, back to my parents. Now I saved up to buy a house and loved my house, having my independence. I had my little dog, and we were so happy in life, and work was working out well. Work was nearby, and I loved it. And I was there like, oh my God, I have a great life. Am I doing something? Must be about to go wrong. I even miss the neighborhood where I had my house, you know, having the banter with the neighbors. So I'm back with my parents, and I'm not able to drive. And now the last few weeks, as I kind of told you, I haven't really been able to walk. So hopefully they can do something for me there. But my mum's just going, you know, it's very sad for my mum because she only has myself and my brother. My dad has leukemia, and she's minding the 2 of us. But I kind of feel for her, you know, she's no grandchildren. My brother lives in Spain, and I worry about her, you know, because when my grandmothers, they both lived to be 89 and 94, and we were always visiting them in the nursing home, and they both ended up in nursing homes, but we were visiting them all the time. And I feel sad, you know, worried that my mum won't have anyone to look after her when she's older, and she's been so good to me. I think she has a terrible life, you know.
But she's doing it because she loves you, isn't it? And like, it's a gift to help as well. I think we've got to remember that, don't we?
That's it, yeah. And I think we're very close, and I do talk to her openly about things, and I talk to her openly about me being gone. And I think she's glad I'm doing that. It's better than having it as a secret.
Yeah. And where did you learn to do that? How did you learn to do that, Emer?
I think in life I've just kind of I think in life, you know, I learned this quite young. You see, I had a cousin who died. I was very close to. She was 18 months younger than me, and she died when she was 23 from cancer. And she was sick for 5 years. It was actually a brain tumor, a primary brain tumor. And that gave me a thing that, like, well, if I ever get cancer, I kind of always had it in my head. I was like, okay, you know, I kind of learned from that to make the best out of life. When she died, you know, I was like, God, there's no guarantees and anything. So that's why I traveled the world, and I did as much as I could. I think I packed everything in, and I always had this thing in my mind that your life, I always wondered why she got, am I making sense, why she got it and not us, you know? And I always regretted that she didn't get to live and get to work and stuff. So, and she didn't get to travel like I did. So in a way, even though I have this diagnosis, I'm still like, well, I still was so lucky compared to her because I got to do so much, and that's given me strength of mind and appreciation. And then when she was dying, like, we were very we were talking about it a lot, myself and my mum, when I was only 25 at the time, you know, so I think we've developed this relationship whereas we talk about things.
And that's really nice, isn't it? Open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think you need to be honest with people around you. It makes it easier rather than it being a secret, you know, and honest with children as well.
Yeah. I told you 2 stories, Emer. You might tell them better yourself.
About the children?
He's in school, yeah. Do you want,
Yeah.
want to relate? Well, it'll probably put me to shame because
no.
Yeah.
Well, I might tell you, you know, like you know, they do like a lot of, yeah, when I first came back after having cancer the first time, and my hair, it was like an afro, and this little girl, Olivia, came up to me in first class, and I'd been gone a year, and she was like, you were gone a long time. And I said, I was gone a year, and she says, I think I know what you had. And I said, what was it, Olivia? Cancer. You know, the way she whispered it. And I said, that's okay, we can say it. Yes, I had cancer. And I said, but how did you know I had cancer? Well, people with cancer, they always have funny hair afterwards. They are very cute. But as I said, I'm doing this Halloween fundraiser in the school next week. And last week I went around all the classes, and this little boy, and we just said to them, look, just bring in €2 because mummies and daddies have a lot of pressure for money. And this little boy in senior infant said, would it be okay if I brought in some of my own money? You know? And then another one said, well, I have €100 I can bring in. So, but they really are lovely. And the older kids, you know, kind of ask me straight out. And there's a girl, she's quite troubled. And I've been working with her the last 3 years from 2nd class to 4th class. And we've got a close relationship. So I decided to be honest with her because she's quite intelligent. So I went up to her at the beginning of September and I said, I'm sick again. I said, so I won't be in the school as much, you know, but every time I come to the school, I'm going to check in on you. And she was really accepting of that. You know, she was good. So
yeah, it's great to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I might bring Dr. Nicola in, if you would, Nicola. I'm going to read a couple of comments, and then I think we'll go around the room and just maybe say, I'm going to ask one more specific question because I know you all so well. It's good at the moment. We have a couple of comments. We have Maura on the line there, Carl's sister. So what she's saying is, Breda always talked about you all. You were a huge part of her life. And thank you all for supporting her throughout the last few years. We are truly grateful. So that's to you ladies in Positive Living. Anne McBreen says, Breda helped us all so much. She had an answer for everything. We always talked about how resourceful she was. And then there's another comment there. Siobhan, Lucy, Emer, Carl, and Breda in spirit. So grateful that you could share your stories today. You're so amazing and inspirational. Big hugs to you all. So that's really nice. Okay. Somebody else mentioned, Carl, all those ideas Breda came up with are hers. She had an answer for, oh, sorry, I read that one. I think she had an answer for every single issue. So we know that, don't we? There's a couple of things that are maybe striking for me as somebody who has facilitated the Positive Living groups, you know. Siobhan, like I always remember the day we had the difficult discussion, and sometimes we do because, like, certainly over COVID, when we haven't been out and about, people have, you know, women have died. But we were talking about making wills one day and the difficult discussion around that, and the ability to get to that space and that place. And Siobhan came in, she did arrive in late this day, probably the first time ever. And she said, I'm so sorry, I've just been down the solicitors and I've made my will. And she said, my God, I feel relieved. I remember that day very well. Do you remember that, Siobhan?
I certainly do, because it's one of those jobs, we all know we should do it. And I just unfortunately been through 2 illnesses with my parents and ended up being the executor. So I was very acutely aware of all the difficulties of not having a will, having tried to clear up a bit of a mess. So in fact, it was one of the first things I did, because I thought, you know, at least it's a positive step forward. And although it's difficult, still trying to persuade my husband, on the other hand, to write his will, but I just went ahead and did it. And actually, it was a huge relief. Sometimes you can build these things up in your head, and actually just getting on and doing it. And it actually really inspired me to go on and do many other things on my to-do list as well.
Yeah, no, that's like there's a positiveness in it, isn't there? There's like, it's a relief, you know, we all, every one of us should have a will, you know, every one of us. Thank you, Siobhan. Lucy, we talked a lot about, you know, in your primary diagnosis being childless, and then in your metastatic diagnosis actually having 2 children. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I suppose, like Emer said, I've always wanted to be a mother. From what I can, like, as far back as been 5, like, it's just, it was insane how obsessed I was with children. And I suppose for years then we had been trying, and then when you get diagnosed, you're nearly like, okay, that was my primary diagnosis, that's put a spanner in the works because my tumors. So we went down the adoption route. So when I had got the all clear on my first diagnosis, I was about 30. I think I was just 30. And I said, look, we need to keep trying. I said, we're still young. We've done everything. We've done as much as we can. We did the adoption route for about 5 years. You have to be 5 years in remission to do that. And then that landed us on the surrogacy route, because it was our last option. So we actually conceived the girl through surrogacy. And we, like, miracles beyond miracles. I mean, the girls were never meant to be here, because the amount of things that could go wrong did go wrong along those 8 years. I couldn't get into too many details now about it, but let's just say after maybe 18 years of trying to get there, the day they were born through surrogacy was the best. It was one of those days where you actually can't believe it's happening, because it's still surreal. So that was true. We have a group at the moment called Irish, for anyone that's diagnosed, obviously, just to offer a bit of hope to them. There is still hope out there. I know it's a struggle, and I know it's one of those things that once you're diagnosed, you think it's never going to be possible. But I went through 8 full years thinking it was never going to be possible. And then we have 4-year-old amazing girls now. So to get a secondary diagnosis when they're 2, then I suppose, you know, where is the book going to finish? I had actually written a book before they were born, but then obviously when they came along, I don't have time to write books now. And then a lot of more stuff happened along the way. But it's just, I suppose it's one of those things where if I had kids in my primary diagnosis, how different would it have been? Definitely it would have been a shaped different lifestyle. But in secondary, it's the worry and the fears for my kids. I don't worry and fear about myself. Like, I'm well able to go to the hospital and deal with all my appointments, and no matter what's thrown at me, I know adults can deal with it. But my aim is always to plan for the girl's future. And I think living in the uncertainty, that's where your hopes and fears are always dashed. But I still do it. I still plan for them. I still try and make as many plans as I possibly can for them. But again, a lot of that is outside your control. I still would never change a thing. I still wouldn't. I remember actually a week before my diagnosis, like Carl had said, I was seeing the robin outside a lot. I was like, why is the robin back? There's something wrong. I just knew, and my gut was telling me there was something wrong. But I had actually sent a few emails to query whether my same surrogate was available again. And it had come back that she wasn't. And that was probably a sign from God to say, well, we've got bigger paths for you. So I loved Carl's stories there about the signs, and you know, they're just amazing, Carl, because, you know, they are there, and we have to take them, and we have to grab them when they're there as well. But yeah, I suppose it's the uncertainty. It's your children's futures. You have to put on your grown-up pants and, you know, make sure their futures are looked after. And like Siobhan said, nobody wants to make a will. We actually had to make a will. My will is made about 6 years. I didn't even have to worry about a will when I was diagnosed, because we obviously had to have all our wills for the girls. And that was my top priority. And I enjoyed making mine. People are so afraid of them. I'm like, everyone needs a will. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm begging my mum to make a will. Yeah. Like, every time I'm on my own with my mum, I'm like, ma'am, let's go. Will we get your will? No. Whereas I found making my will an enjoyment thing, because it's another thing ticked off that no one else has to worry about. And it's just done.
And Emer, you're an incredible woman and lady, being here today with us, having been, you know, taken on a journey to hospital. Well, you came back from Lanzarote.
Yes.
I told him about your mobility scooter, you know, because you'd mentioned that this morning. You're from Lanzarote, and you're back in hospital. And
yeah, well, the palliative care team were due to ring me this morning anyway, but I told them how bad I was. I mean, I'm in a huge amount of pain. See, it seems more than likely, and hopefully it isn't, but it seems quite likely that there is a tumor on my spine. And I kind of do think that's the case, and so do the doctors. But we need to get me the scan, and hopefully it's treatable, I hope. I know how difficult this prognosis is that I have, but so they kind of feel that by me being an inpatient, they'll get me the scan quicker. So they said when the palliative care rang oncology here this morning, and oncology rang me and said, bring a bag and come in, and the doctors are going to assess me and things like that, and hopefully get me a bed here tonight, and then things will be done quicker. Because yourself, the uncertainty is hard, but you have to, it is good to know where you stand. And I think for myself, I can deal with it mentally myself, just the pain, when you're in pain is just awful. So that's really hard. Can I just say, by the way, what Lucy said is really good. She's such a good motivator. Put on your adult pants. So well done, Lucy, like she really motivated me there. I was like, yeah, she's right, like stop feeling sorry for yourself, Emer. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Emer. And Carl, you have to tell us about the Fiver Friday.
Oh, okay. So this is something we started to do probably well over a year ago at this stage, during lockdown actually. So when the kids started to go back to school, we introduced at the kitchen dinner table one evening Fiver Friday, which is basically where the kids come home from school and they have to tell mum and dad a story about what happened that day. They can elaborate on it if they want, but it has to be some truth to the story itself. And the best story of the week, basically at the end of the week, gets the fiver. So I've actually continued that on now at Breda's grave, which is really nice, because what I try to do with the kids, and have tried to do since Breda's passed, is make sure we go to the grave, obviously, but not just pray at the grave side, but also to talk to mum, to talk to Breda, and talk to her about different stories of things that's happening in her lives and what's happening. For example, the game we went to last night, we'll go after school today and do the same thing. And just, continue on the Fiver Friday. So each one of them every day has a story from school that day that they have to think about, or during the day, they'll think about a story that we can tell that night or that after school. And at the end of the week again, there's a fiver on offer, and it's very competitive. It can be very competitive to say the least.
I can imagine.
It's really good, because they're so comfortable now talking at the graveside, which obviously that you could, I wasn't certain if that would be the case or not. And it's just nice that they're so comfortable to be able to do that now after what's happened. And that comfortable part, I suppose, is something that we, both myself and Breda, tried to do from day one, really, to be quite honest with you, was to engage with the children, obviously age appropriately, talking to them in relation to all the goings on of the diagnosis, the treatments, and ultimately at the very end, when we had to obviously speak to them in relation to Breda's impending death. So that actually has had really positive effects, to be quite honest. I truly believe that it was the right thing to do, to engage with them so much in relation to, and especially, I'll give you a quick example that I never mentioned the last day, is that, and this gives you an example of how comfortable they were with the whole situation and how we engaged with them up until and including and since Breda's death, is that when Breda moved into the final stages of dying in the hospice, which was at about 6 p.m. Breda passed away at just after 9 p.m. At about 8:30, which is the kids' supper time, my youngest kid asked for a bowl of cereal, which is supper time.
Wow.
As we were sitting around the bed. And the nurse in the hospice asked the other two, would they like, because it's 8:30 is their supper time, they get a bowl of cereal before going to bed at 9 o'clock. And the two of them, all three of them, sat around as their mum was in the final stages of death and ate cereal, a bowl of cereal. And she passed away at 9:05, which is their bedtime. And that night they went to bed and slept for 8 hours as Breda lay there with us. The hospice was just truly amazing. The fact that we had Breda with us that whole night, and they had 8 hours full sleep, and get up the next morning, and we did the same again. The kids ate cereal, their breakfast around, and had a cup of tea with mum there in the bed beside us in the hospice. And it's just truly amazing how comfortable they were to do that. And I'm just so glad, and I do truly believe that the benefits that we may not see right now, but down the road we may see great benefits. The fact that they had been, truly there for the whole experience right from the beginning, if you know what I mean. And I'm really hopeful that at the moment everything's looking good for them. I'm going to make sure that is the case by talking to and having them speaking to people, but to professionals too, to ensure that they are okay. But so far the signs are really positive. I spoke to their school this week, and they seem to be coping really well. So I'm just delighted that that is the case, and hopefully that continues into the future.
Yeah, really positive story. Nicola, reflections on the whole afternoon. Wow, where do you start?
Absolutely. When we got together there about 10 minutes before we started today, I said to the panelists, I'm feeling this, this excitement. I'm feeling this little bit of anxiety for today, but I'm also feeling this wow. And I think as you've all been talking, I feel quite emotional myself, just really feeling so humbled to be amongst all of you today who've been on this incredible journey and is on this journey at the moment. No matter how many challenges there are, there's so much resilience, not only from our panelists, but I'm sure from our attendees here today. I suppose, being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, is such an emotional time. And I think Emer was talking about emotional change and the changes that had happened, for herself there. And it is an emotional change for women, for men, for husbands, for wives, for children, for sisters, for brothers, for moms, for dads, and really, for friends as well. It is such an emotional journey. But you know what? I think what we've learned today is, first of all, breast cancer is not just pink, as we know. It's hope, it's healing, and it's also remembrance, which we've really, Carl, you spoke very fondly of Breda today, and I think it is remembrance of her and all her friends, and all your friends and our friends that have moved on. The important thing is that it's our stories, and this is what I'm hearing. Each one of us has shared stories today. It's very different. Everybody is on their own journey. And I suppose we're all finding our own way of getting through this. And the most important thing is really just to think about that there's no right or wrong way to do this. It is the way that fits for you and what fits for you. It's about finding the thing that you need. And maybe it is about finding support. And that support could be through speaking to your friends. It could be talking to other survivors or people on the same journey as you, the positive living group, for example. But it is for you. It's what is best for you. And I think it is about not only looking after the body, but it's also looking after the mind. And I was quite struck by a comment that Anya made in the video earlier on. It's about the doctors are taking care of the body. Let's not forget about our mental health as well. I think, Siobhan, you spoke there about the power of saying no, but it's also the power of saying yes, and yes to seeking help out to help with you, with the challenges you might be finding. I think what I think is really helpful might be really for you just to take a few moments just to stop and just reflect on, what do you need right now? What do you need right now? What do you need maybe next week? Or what will help with your support? What brings you joy? Identify that. What is your purpose? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Lucy, you were speaking about purpose there. What is your purpose? And, it has changed. Absolutely, it has. But it doesn't mean that you still don't have purpose and you don't have hope. And I think those are really important things. We've heard words such as change, and change has happened in every aspect of our lives. Siobhan, I think you mentioned triage, the triage of your life, where you have to decide what is right and what is wrong and what you needed. We should all maybe look at that and think about what is triage. Transitions, I think that's another word that came very strongly for all of us, was, they're transitioning through different processes in our lives. Lucy, you talked about changes from day to day, that emotional roller coaster that is there, changes that happen. And you speak about the joy of your family, this joy of your children when they arrive, and about living with it. And it's that compassion, about compassion for others, but most importantly, it's the compassion for ourselves that we really need to be aware of. And I know that the positive living group shows a lot of compassion towards each other, but don't forget that you need to give yourselves compassion as well when things are feeling a little tough. I suppose the planting of the seeds of Breda, you know, the rainbows, the butterflies, the white feathers, the sunrise and the sunset. Maybe each of us need to find that within ourselves and identify how we want to be remembered, but also how we view ourselves and how we see ourselves today. I hope I've done justice just to all the wonderful, powerful stories that we've heard today and just the strength and resilience that is there. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute privilege once again to be working with the Marie Keating Foundation. And I suppose at this point, it's probably time for us just to really take a breath and to take care of ourselves a little bit longer. And I'd like to hand over to Tara, who will take us through the next maybe 5-10 minutes of just connecting with the self and minding ourselves as we finish off today. So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Siobhan, Carl, Emer and Lucy, thank you so much for what you have given us today. It's very powerful. I think what we will do now is we're all going to relax. It's been a hard afternoon, but I think, you know, with gratitude, we take a relaxing place while Tara gets us through the next maybe 20 minutes and just relax into that space and be comfortable and know that you've done a great job today and you've helped many people. There are lots of comments about, you know, the amazing support and information that you provided, and just listening to your stories has, you know, has brought thought to everybody's mind. And Carl, especially for you, remembering Breda, and there's plenty of comments there to say you're an amazing husband and your love is shining through. Okay, so we'll all turn off our cameras and relax. And Tara, thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen. Hello again, everybody. So yes, just a few thank yous as we close off this afternoon on the 13th of October, which is World Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day. And it's our 6th year of running this event. And a huge thank you to everybody that has been involved in the setup of the event, from Marie Keating and Europa Donna. We've got Helen and Liz and Fiona and Ava, and again Fiona from Europa Donna, working so closely with myself. I also want to thank our supporter of the afternoon, who is Pfizer, and also our other supporters in terms of our beautiful remembrance candle with our words hope, healing and remembrance from Wogan Secrets, who very generously donated it to us when they heard what our event was about. And in addition, our rose petals, our mixed bunch of imperfect rose petals. And I think there's some days we all feel a little bit imperfect, but then we come together on an afternoon like this and we feel so supported, and I think so whole again, from just knowing that we have other people to share experiences with and to share our lives with as we continue to work through living with metastatic breast cancer diagnosis. And also a thank you to Emma from Emma's So Natural soy candles, and hopefully you all did receive your treat before the event, and if not, it will be making its way to you in the next day or so. And keep it close and light it when you need to add a little bit of brightness to your life. And I think we also want to thank, of course, our speakers, Amanda, with so much useful and practical information, and indeed Nikki, who listened so carefully to everything that we all had to share this afternoon, and of course in our practice runs. And finally to the panelists, who are just incredible. You know, life is such an emotional roller coaster at the best times for people in the full of their health. And, you know, I'm very aware that you're all at different stages of life, different stages of treatment, and every day brings something different. And Carol, you are simply incredible to share so many beautiful memories of Breda, who I have no doubt is with us every step of the way this afternoon. And, you know, I'm particularly aware that her death was only such a short time ago on the 4th of August. So thank you for bringing that to us this afternoon. And actually, it's interesting, just to, on a what I found a funny note as you were speaking is that a couple of times over the last few weeks when we were preparing this afternoon, there was mention of the Pfizer Friday. But every time it was mentioned, up until you told the story this afternoon, I thought it was Fibre Friday. So I thought you were going to be talking about fruits and vegetables and how you were trying to encourage the children to make sure they were getting lots of fibre. So much more exciting to hear about the Fibre Friday and how they come about winning the fibre. So with that, I'm just going to ask us all to settle down. You don't need to look at the screen anymore. I'm going to remove myself from the screen and I'm going to train the screen back onto our candle and onto our rose petals. And I'm just going to talk you through some relaxation. And at the end of that relaxation, we are going to play some music, and I'll explain the piece of music as we come upon it. And just to say to you that, you know, hopefully you will take this time to relax. I hope you can either lie down on a sofa or a bed. And if you're not going to take the opportunity to lie down, well, just wherever you're sitting, make sure that you uncross your legs and connect both of your feet with the floor. And just place your palms on top of your thighs and join the thumb and the index finger softly together. So the heel of the hands, the palm is sort of resting on top of your thighs towards the kneecap, and your thumb and your index finger are connected together. If you have found the space to lie down, you're lying down with your palms facing the roof, and just let your feet roll out to the side. So you nearly feel like your inner legs are facing towards the ceiling. And we find it very difficult to do this in life, but I want you now to just allow yourself to completely relax, whether you're sitting or lying. Close your eyes gently and just become aware of the crown of the head and let it soften and relax. And then the space across the forehead, the bridge of the nose, the temples, just let them relax. Eyes are closing gently, and relax the muscles behind the eyes. And let the jaw loosen and relax. Sides of the neck and the shoulder heads are going to relax. So move those shoulder heads away from your ears. Feel each side of the back of the spine, the back of the rib cage connected with the mat or the bed or the sofa or the back of the chair that you're sitting on. Soften down the chest area. Let the arms relax, the back of the arms, the front of the arms, the back of the lower arms, the hands and the fingers. Just let everything go and relax. Bring your attention to the sit bone area, the buttocks area, and just let it relax. And then the thighs, the front of the thighs, and then the back of the legs, upper legs, just let go and relax. And the lower legs, the calves, the shins, let everything relax. And finally the feet, release any tension around the ankles, the heel, the top of the feet, the bottom of the feet, and the toes. Everything is going to become very soft and almost weightless. You nearly feel a slight swaying in your body as you just start to float and become entirely still. All the tension let go. It's very hard to clear the mind, and the thoughts might keep coming, but just make sure you don't let them stick. So just bat them on. If they're important, you come back to them later. If they're unimportant, well, that's good. Just let them float away. Just very gentle breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Just scan your body again from head to toe and make sure that any areas that are still feeling a little bit tight and tense, just let go. Just 3 times in your mind, say to yourself, let go, let go, let go. Imagine you're on a beach and there's a lovely sun beating down on you. So you feel very comfortable in the space you're in. And very shortly, we're going to play a piece of music. And it's a piece of music from an Irish group called The Villagers. And the name of the piece of music is So Simpatico. And simpatico means likable and easy to get on with. And I think this afternoon showed that the easiness of the communities in the Positive Living group and the Connect group, how they're getting on with each other in sharing their stories and experiences. And the song is known as being a journey of awakening and self-reflection. And it's about a sad clown finding love within himself and sparking that zest for life that was lost a long time ago. And I hope that your involvement in this afternoon has allowed you to find a new sense of vigor and hope as you continue to navigate through your world of living with a metastatic disease, or of course, for those who have lost someone to metastatic disease, continuing to live a strong and happy life with their memory always close by. So the song can be understood as one about devotion, whether to self or another person. And I think it's lovely now for you all to devote time to yourself. The song is 7 minutes long. We're going to play it. I hope you're feeling really relaxed. And as you lie there or sit there, please just be kind to yourself. Be silent in your mind and body. At the end, you don't need to worry about switching off because we will automatically end this webinar. So you just can continue to rest if that's what is available to you this afternoon. Thank you all and rest well.
And so simpatico, you are the one for me. And so simpatico, you are. And little did I know you were here all the time. In the garden you'd lie, in the depths of my mind. I'm on